The black girl refused every suitor who dared approach her dusty porch, watching their defeated backs retreat toward the saloons, until the old rancher saw her face and wept like a broken dam. The townsfolk whispered she was uppity, too proud for a woman of her station in this god-forsaken frontier settlement. They predicted she'd die alone, unmarried, a cautionary tale about knowing one's place. But the weathered cattle baron who built an empire from nothing couldn't explain why this stranger's eyes tore through decades of buried pain. The mysterious documents she guards and the photograph hidden in her satchel hold secrets that could destroy two lives or forge an impossible bond that rewrites everything this harsh land believes about blood, belonging, and the price of truth. Will recognition become salvation, or the final blow that shatters them both? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The stagecoach wheezed to a stop outside Dolores Ash's boarding house, dust clouds swirling around its worn wheels. Nadine Washington stepped down with practiced grace, her dark blue dress immaculate despite the long journey. She clutched a leather satchel close to her chest and surveyed the ramshackle frontier town of Dust Haven with steady eyes. Whispers followed her like shadows. Women peered from behind curtains while men gathered near the saloon, their voices carrying on the dry Colorado wind. A black woman traveling alone was uncommon enough. An educated one seeking permanent residence was practically unheard of. Dolores Ash emerged from her establishment, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. The middle-aged proprietor had kind eyes and graying hair pulled into a sensible bun. She nodded toward Nadine's single trunk. "Rooms upstairs, meals included. Payments due weekly." "Thank you, Mrs. Ash. I'm grateful for your hospitality." The other establishments had turned her away with barely concealed disdain. The Grand Hotel claimed no vacancies despite empty rooms. The Railroad Inn cited mysterious policy changes. Only Dolores had offered shelter without conditions or judgment. Nadine's room was small but clean. She unpacked carefully, placing a faded daguerreotype on the wooden dresser. The photograph showed a beautiful black woman with intelligent eyes and a gentle smile. Beneath her clothes, Nadine found a bundle of official documents tied with ribbon. She traced the papers with trembling fingers before securing them in the dresser drawer. The next morning brought her first official business. The schoolhouse stood at the town's edge, its paint peeling and windows clouded with grime. Inside, wooden desks sat empty while dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight. The previous teacher had fled after a dispute with parents over curriculum. The position remained unfilled for 3 months. Nadine swept the floors and washed the windows. She arranged books and prepared lesson plans with meticulous care. When children began arriving for the first day, their curiosity overcame their parents' reservations. Education was scarce on the frontier. Even controversial teachers were better than none. Her competence became undeniable within weeks. Students who had struggled with basic reading began devouring books. Mathematical concepts that once seemed impossible started making sense. Parents grudgingly admitted their children were learning more than ever before. But Nadine's success as an educator only made her rejection of suitors more scandalous. Emmett Granger made the first approach. The banker's son possessed wealth, influence, and an ego that matched both combined. He cornered Nadine outside the schoolhouse on a Tuesday afternoon, his pressed suit and polished boots marking him as the town's premier bachelor. "Miss Washington, I'll speak plainly. You need a husband. I need a wife. We could arrange something mutually beneficial." His tone suggested he was offering charity rather than partnership. Nadine's response was polite but firm. "I appreciate your interest, Mr. Granger, but I must decline." Emmett's face flushed red. He had expected gratitude, perhaps even relief. No woman had ever refused him, especially not one in Nadine's precarious position. He stalked away, leaving boot prints in the dusty street like angry punctuation marks. The general store owner tried next, then the traveling merchant. The deputy sheriff followed. Each approach carried the same underlying assumption. Nadine should be grateful for any offer, regardless of compatibility or respect. Each rejection sent shockwaves through the small community. Women gathered at the mercantile to dissect her choices. Men muttered over whiskey about uppity attitudes and knowing one's place. The consensus was clear. Nadine Washington thought too highly of herself for a woman in her circumstances. From his ranch 5 miles outside town, Jebediah Colt observed the growing controversy with interest. The weathered rancher had built his cattle empire through shrewd decisions and relentless work. His wife's death 5 years earlier had left him withdrawn from social affairs, but business required occasional trips to town. On this particular Saturday, he rode in for supplies and banking. Main Street buzzed with unusual activity. A crowd had gathered near the schoolhouse, where voices carried heated words. Jebediah dismounted and approached the commotion. Emmett Granger stood before Nadine like a prosecutor addressing a defendant. His voice boomed across the dusty street, designed to draw maximum attention. "This has gone far enough, Miss Washington. Every decent man in town has offered you marriage. Your continued refusal is insulting to our entire community." Nadine stood perfectly straight, her chin raised despite the hostile crowd surrounding her. Sunlight caught the planes of her face, highlighting features both delicate and strong. When she spoke, her voice carried quiet dignity that needed no amplification. "I have the right to choose my own husband, Mr. Granger. That choice remains mine alone." Jebediah stopped breathing. The woman's profile, the tilt of her head, the graceful way she held herself under pressure. 25 years collapsed into nothing. He was 22 again, working as a ranch hand in Kansas, completely captivated by a brilliant young woman named Sarah Washington. The resemblance was impossible, undeniable, devastating. Jebediah gripped the nearest fence post as his knees threatened to buckle. Tears formed in his steel-gray eyes, spilling down weathered cheeks without permission. The stoic rancher who had faced down rustlers, survived blizzards, and buried his wife without shedding a tear now wept openly in the town's main thoroughfare. Several townspeople noticed his reaction, their attention shifting from Nadine's defiance to Jebediah's inexplicable breakdown. The powerful man who employed half their husbands was crying like a child at the sight of the schoolteacher. Jebediah turned abruptly and mounted his horse. He rode hard toward his ranch, leaving a crowd full of questions and a young woman who had no idea her entire world was about to change. The town meeting 3 days later crackled with tension. Mayor Henderson called for order while citizens packed every available seat in the community hall. Emmett Granger had demanded action regarding what he termed the schoolteacher situation. His allies nodded in agreement while a smaller group of parents defended Nadine's teaching abilities. Nadine sat in the front row, spine straight and hands folded. The morning had brought another anonymous note slipped under her door. "Leave town or face consequences." She crumpled the paper and threw it in the fire before walking to face her accusers. Emmett rose to address the crowd. His rehearsed speech painted Nadine as a disruptive influence who refused to accept her proper role in society. He demanded the school board terminate her employment and strongly suggested she seek opportunities elsewhere. Parents whose children had flourished under Nadine's instruction shifted uncomfortably. Test scores had improved dramatically. The schoolhouse had become a source of community pride, yet social pressure mounted like storm clouds. Mayor Henderson called for discussion. Voices rose in heated debate while Nadine remained silent. She had learned that defending herself often made situations worse. Dignity required patience, even when patience felt like surrender. Outside, mysterious acts of kindness had begun appearing around her daily routine. Fresh flowers appeared on her boarding house windowsill each morning. The schoolhouse steps were swept clean before her arrival. Her horse received extra feed and grooming from an unknown benefactor. Jeremiah Bozeman noticed the pattern first. The town photographer documented everything through his camera lens, capturing images of the anonymous gestures. His photographs showed boot prints in the dust, suggesting a tall man with expensive boots. The mystery deepened when similar prints appeared around other locations Nadine frequented. Dolores Ash mentioned the phenomena over dinner. She had observed someone ensuring Nadine's safety during evening walks, a shadow that maintained respectful distance while providing invisible protection. The guardian never revealed himself, but his presence was unmistakable. After the contentious town meeting ended without resolution, Nadine walked home through empty streets. Stars emerged overhead as oil lamps flickered in windows. She felt eyes watching from the darkness, but sensed no threat. Her mysterious protector was nearby. The next evening brought an unexpected visitor to the schoolhouse. Jebediah Colt appeared in the doorway as Nadine prepared lessons for the following day. His hat was in his hands, his weathered face showing uncertainty that contrasted sharply with his usual commanding presence. "Miss Washington, might I have a word?" She gestured toward a student desk, but he remained standing. His nervous energy filled the small room like caged lightning. Several minutes passed in awkward silence before he spoke again. "Your teaching has impressed the community. The children speak highly of your methods." "Thank you, Mr. Colt. Education is my passion." He studied her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. His gray eyes seemed to be searching for something specific, some confirmation of a private theory. When she moved to organize papers on her desk, he inhaled sharply. "You remind me of someone I knew long ago, a remarkable woman, brilliant mind, generous heart." Nadine's pulse quickened. She had traveled to Dust Haven with purpose beyond teaching. The documents in her dresser drawer contained secrets that could change everything. This conversation felt like the beginning of that transformation. "Perhaps you knew my mother, Sarah Washington." The words hit Jebediah like physical blows. He staggered backward, gripping the doorframe for support. The carefully controlled expression he wore in public crumbled completely. Tears streamed down his face as 25 years of buried grief surfaced without warning. "Sarah, sweet Sarah Washington." Nadine retrieved the faded daguerreotype from her satchel. The photograph showed her mother at 23, radiant with youth and possibility. She handed it to Jebediah with trembling fingers. He collapsed into a student chair, his large frame making the furniture seem miniature. The photograph shook in his hands as memories flooded back. Sarah's laugh, her quick wit, the way she challenged his thinking while making him feel like the most important person in the world. "She never told me about you. She wanted to protect us both. A black woman and a white ranch hand had no future together in 1850. The truth emerged in fragments. Jebediah shared memories of his time in Kansas, working cattle drives and learning the ranching trade. Sarah had managed a boarding house for travelers, displaying business acumen that impressed everyone who met her. Their relationship had been brief but profound, ending when social pressures became unbearable. "She moved east, said she had opportunities there. I never knew she was carrying my child." Nadine produced the official documents from her satchel. Birth certificate listing father unknown. Marriage certificate showing Sarah's later union to a kind man who raised Nadine as his own. Property deeds and bank statements proving Sarah's successful business ventures. And finally, a sealed letter in Sarah's handwriting. The letter contained Sarah's deathbed confession. She had loved Jebediah deeply, but chose separation over scandal. She had built a prosperous life in Philadelphia, ensuring their daughter received education and opportunities. Before dying, she revealed the truth and provided Nadine with information needed to find her biological father. "She made me promise to tell you she never regretted her choice, but she wanted you to know about me." Father and daughter sat in the schoolhouse as darkness settled over Dust Haven. 25 years of separation ended with tentative conversation about shared interests and inherited traits. Nadine's aptitude for mathematics matched Jebediah's business instincts. Her teaching abilities reflected Sarah's patience and wisdom. They agreed to keep their relationship private while building trust. The town's reaction would be unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Social conventions of the era made their situation delicate regardless of biology, but Nadine's life had changed irrevocably. She was no longer an isolated outsider facing hostile strangers. She had family. She had inheritance rights. She belonged to the most powerful ranch in the territory. The mysterious protector's identity was revealed. Jebediah had been watching over his newly discovered daughter from the moment he recognized Sarah's features in her face. The Colt Ranch stretched across 15,000 acres of prime Colorado grassland. Nadine's first private visit revealed the empire her father had built from nothing. Cattle grazed in organized pastures, while ranch hands maintained fences and water systems with military precision. The main house stood like a fortress against the mountain backdrop, solid wood and stone construction that promised permanence. Jebediah met her at the gate, his demeanor softer than the stern rancher persona he displayed in town. They rode together through his domain while he explained operations with obvious pride. The herd numbered over 3,000 head. The ranch employed 47 workers year-round. Water rights extended along 2 major creeks, ensuring prosperity even during drought years. "Your mother would have appreciated this," he said, gesturing toward the orderly landscape. "She understood business better than most men I knew." Nadine absorbed every detail. Her mother had taught her accounting and negotiation skills while managing their Philadelphia boarding house. Those lessons suddenly gained new relevance as she observed her inheritance taking shape. The ranch house interior reflected Jebediah's practical nature. Comfortable furniture without unnecessary ornamentation. Books on cattle breeding and land management filled oak shelves. A portrait of his deceased wife occupied the mantelpiece, showing a gentle woman with kind eyes who had helped him build this empire. Over dinner, Jebediah shared stories about Sarah that filled gaps in Nadine's childhood understanding. Her mother's quick wit when dealing with difficult customers, her ability to diffuse tensions through humor and wisdom, her dreams of owning property and building something lasting. She talked about having children someday, said she'd teach them to think for themselves instead of following crowds. She kept that promise. Nadine's confidence in the classroom had grown since discovering her father. The sense of belonging transformed her teaching methods from defensive to boldly innovative. She introduced advanced mathematical concepts that challenged brighter students while providing extra support for struggling ones. The schoolhouse became a gathering place where parents lingered to discuss their children's progress. Her natural aptitude for ranching emerged during subsequent visits. She recognized inefficient feeding patterns that wasted hay. Her suggestions for rotating grazing areas would improve grass recovery. The breeding records she reviewed revealed opportunities to strengthen bloodlines through strategic purchases. Jebediah watched with amazement as his daughter applied her mother's analytical mind to his life's work. Sarah had possessed the same ability to see patterns others missed, the same talent for finding solutions hidden in plain sight. Back in Philadelphia, Mama managed 3 boarding houses by the time she died. She taught me that successful business requires understanding people as much as numbers. This insight proved valuable when dealing with ranch hands. Nadine's respectful approach to learning their skills earned genuine cooperation rather than grudging compliance. She asked intelligent questions about cattle behavior and seasonal challenges. Her teaching background helped her absorb complex information quickly. The mysterious acts of kindness around town now made perfect sense. Jebediah had been protecting his newly discovered daughter while respecting her need for independence. Fresh flowers appeared because he remembered Sarah's love of wildflowers. The swept schoolhouse steps reflected his desire to ease her daily burdens. Jeremiah Bozeman's photographs documented the transformation occurring in Dust Haven. Children arriving early for school and staying late for extra help. Parents gathering for informal educational discussions. The community slowly recognizing Nadine's value, despite ongoing resistance from traditionalist factions. But Emmett Granger's hostility intensified as his marriage proposals continued meeting rejection. His entitled expectations had evolved into dangerous obsession. He began investigating Nadine's frequent visits to the Colt Ranch, sensing opportunities to exploit whatever connection existed between them. His banking connections provided access to property records and legal documents. Late nights spent reviewing files revealed interesting patterns in land ownership around Dust Haven. The Colt Ranch had expanded steadily over 25 years through strategic purchases and improvements. Any challenge to that ownership could create significant leverage. Emmett's allies shared his growing frustration with Nadine's independence. The deputy sheriff owed his position to political connections Emmett controlled. The general store owner depended on credit arrangements through Emmett's father's bank. Pressure could be applied through multiple channels when the time came. Meanwhile, progressive townspeople rallied around Nadine's proven contributions. Dolores Ash organized support among mothers whose children had flourished under the new teaching methods. Several fathers acknowledged privately that their sons and daughters had learned more in recent months than in previous years combined. The town divided along predictable lines. Families prioritizing education supported Nadine, despite social unconventionality. Those clinging to traditional power structures viewed her success as threatening established order. Nadine's relationship with her father deepened through shared work on the ranch. She demonstrated inherited business instincts that complemented his operational experience. Together, they identified improvements that neither would have discovered alone. Her suggestions for employee relations reduced turnover while increasing productivity. Jebediah began teaching her advanced ranching skills that few women ever learned. Reading weather patterns for optimal hay cutting, evaluating breeding stock for genetic advantages, negotiating cattle prices at regional markets, skills that would serve her well as a future co-owner. The memorial garden took shape behind the main house. Jebediah planted Sarah's favorite wildflowers in carefully arranged beds. A stone bench provided a place for quiet reflection on the woman whose courage had created this unexpected reunion. Her sacrifice and wisdom would be honored through their combined success. But anonymous threats began appearing around Nadine's daily routine, notes suggesting she leave town before facing serious consequences. Her horse returned from pasture with minor injuries that seemed deliberately inflicted. Someone was escalating beyond passive intimidation toward active harassment. The peaceful integration she had hoped for seemed increasingly impossible as opposing forces prepared for confrontation that would determine her future in Dust Haven. Emmett Granger's investigation consumed his evenings at the bank office. Legal documents spread across his mahogany desk revealed intricate details of property ownership throughout the territory. The Colt Ranch had acquired thousands of acres through purchases dating back 25 years. Each transaction appeared legitimate on the surface, but Emmett searched for irregularities that could create legal challenges. His banking connections provided access to courthouse records in neighboring counties. Late-night rides to distant filing offices yielded additional documentation. Emmett's obsession with destroying Nadine's position had evolved into a comprehensive assault on her newfound security. The breakthrough came through territorial marriage records. A filing clerk in Denver mentioned unusual documentation requests from years past. Wealthy ranchers sometimes faced paternity claims that threatened estate inheritances. Such cases required careful legal maneuvering to protect established families from opportunistic schemes. Emmett's pulse quickened as possibilities crystallized. If Nadine claimed blood relationship to Jebediah Colt, the implications could destabilize the entire ranch empire. Property rights, inheritance laws, and social conventions would collide in spectacular fashion. The respected rancher's reputation would crumble under scandal, while Nadine faced exposure as a manipulative fortune hunter. The strategy required careful execution. Direct accusations without proof would backfire spectacularly, but subtle implications spread through trusted channels could poison community opinion before truth emerged. Emmett began planting seeds of suspicion among his most reliable allies. The deputy sheriff proved receptive to suggestions about investigating suspicious relationships. The general store owner spread whispers about improper arrangements between unmarried individuals. The saloon keeper encouraged speculation about ulterior motives behind frequent ranch visits. Nadine's teaching position faced mounting pressure from school board members influenced by Emmett's campaign. Parents who had celebrated their children's academic progress now questioned the moral environment surrounding their education. Anonymous complaints reached Mayor Henderson's office suggesting inappropriate conduct. Meanwhile, Jebediah struggled with conflicting desires to protect his daughter while respecting her independence. Public acknowledgement of their relationship would shield her from marriage pressure, but expose both to social condemnation. The frontier community's rigid conventions made their situation precarious, regardless of biological truth. Their private conversations revealed the depth of connection developing between them. Shared interests in business strategy complemented inherited traits they were discovering together. Nadine's mathematical abilities matched Jebediah's instinctive understanding of market forces. Her teaching skills translated naturally to training ranch employees. The memorial garden behind the main house provided sanctuary from external pressures. Father and daughter worked together, planting Sarah's favorite wildflowers while sharing memories that bridged their lost years. The stone bench offered a place for quiet conversations about dreams and possibilities. Nadine's confidence in the classroom reached new heights despite growing opposition. Students responded to her passionate instruction with enthusiasm that impressed even skeptical parents. Test scores continued improving, while the schoolhouse atmosphere became increasingly collaborative and creative. Jeremiah Bozeman's photography documented the positive changes occurring throughout the community. Children who had struggled with basic concepts now tackled advanced problems with confidence. Parents gathered for educational discussions that strengthened family involvement in learning. The transformation was undeniable to anyone willing to observe objectively, but Emmett's influence spread through economic relationships that controlled many families' livelihoods. Bank loans, credit arrangements, and employment opportunities created leverage over public opinion that gradually shifted against Nadine's continued presence. The anonymous harassment escalated beyond threatening notes toward property damage. The schoolhouse windows were found broken one morning. Nadine's horse returned from pasture with suspicious cuts that required veterinary attention. Someone was moving beyond intimidation toward direct assault on her security. Dolores Ash organized a support network among progressive townspeople who valued education over social conformity. Weekly meetings in her boarding house parlor became planning sessions for defending Nadine's position. The group included parents whose children had benefited most dramatically from improved instruction. These allies faced their own pressures as Emmett's faction applied economic and social leverage. Business relationships suffered when customers chose sides in the growing controversy. Longtime friendships fractured over competing visions of community values. The territorial sheriff received formal complaints about disturbing social arrangements in Dusthaven. Outside pressure threatened to bring official investigation that could destroy reputations and business interests. The situation was spiraling beyond local control toward intervention by territorial authorities. Jebediah considered revealing the truth to end speculation and protect his daughter from malicious rumors. But Nadine feared that acknowledgement would damage his business relationships throughout the region. Cattle buyers and banking partners might reconsider dealings with a rancher whose personal life challenged social conventions. Their dilemma deepened as community division became irreconcilable. Moderate voices seeking compromise were drowned out by extremist positions on both sides. The school board faced demands for immediate action, while parents threatened to withdraw children if quality education disappeared. Mayor Henderson called for another town meeting to address the crisis threatening Dusthaven's stability. The announcement sparked intense preparation by opposing factions gathering evidence and allies for the decisive confrontation. Emmett sensed victory approaching as his investigation uncovered documents that could be interpreted as evidence of improper relationships. His twisted interpretation of father-daughter connection would become the weapon to destroy both Nadine and Jebediah's standing in the community. The trap was set for public revelation that would expose the truth in the most damaging possible context. Emmett's malicious genius lay in using partial honesty to create maximum destruction. The father-daughter relationship would be acknowledged but framed as something entirely different. Nadine prepared for the battle knowing that her future in Dusthaven hung in the balance. The teaching position she loved and the family connection she had discovered both faced elimination through one man's obsessive hatred. The stage was set for confrontation that would determine whether truth could triumph over malicious manipulation. The community hall overflowed with every resident of Dusthaven and surrounding ranches. Mayor Henderson gavelled for order as tension crackled through the packed room. Emmett Granger sat in the front row, a leather folder containing his carefully assembled evidence resting on his lap. His confident smile suggested a man certain of victory. Nadine entered with Dolores Ash and her supporters, their faces showing determination mixed with apprehension. Jebediah arrived separately, taking a seat near the back wall where his imposing presence commanded attention without drawing focus. The careful distance between father and daughter would soon become irrelevant. Mayor Henderson addressed the assembly with obvious reluctance. The situation had escalated beyond local gossip into a crisis threatening the community's stability. Territorial authorities had received complaints about moral irregularities requiring official investigation. Action was necessary to preserve Dust Haven's reputation. Emmett rose when called upon, his prepared speech delivered with prosecutorial precision. He presented documentation suggesting improper relationships between unmarried individuals of different social standings. His voice carried righteous indignation as he described threats to community values and family stability. Citizens of Dust Haven, we face a cancer that will destroy our moral foundation if left unchecked. The evidence before us reveals relationships that violate every decent principle our community represents. He displayed property records showing frequent transfers of goods and services between the Colt Ranch and parties associated with the schoolteacher. Financial arrangements that could be interpreted as payment for services rendered. Correspondence that suggested intimate knowledge of personal business matters. The crowd murmured as Emmett constructed his case through careful omission and strategic implication. Truth twisted into weapon form as he presented father-daughter interactions as evidence of scandalous behavior. Ranch visits became clandestine meetings. Protective gestures transformed into inappropriate favors. The schoolteacher has manipulated her position to gain access to our community's most respected rancher. Her refusal of legitimate marriage proposals reveals ulterior motives that threaten the foundation of proper society. Parents, whose children had flourished under Nadine's instruction, shifted uncomfortably as Emmett's accusations painted her success as part of elaborate deception. His masterpiece lay in using partial truth to create maximum damage while maintaining plausible deniability. Jebediah's face darkened as he recognized the malicious genius behind Emmett's strategy. The young banker had discovered their relationship, but chosen to weaponize it through deliberate misinterpretation. Truth would become the instrument of their destruction, unless they controlled its revelation. Mayor Henderson called for response to the serious allegations presented. The room fell silent as all eyes turned toward Nadine, who rose with quiet dignity that commanded attention despite the hostile atmosphere surrounding her. Citizens of Dust Haven, you deserve the complete truth rather than twisted interpretations designed to serve personal vendettas. She retrieved documents from her own leather satchel, including the official papers that had brought her to Colorado territory. Birth certificate, property deeds, and Sarah Washington's final letter would provide context that Emmett's selective evidence deliberately obscured. 25 years ago in Kansas, my mother, Sarah Washington, fell in love with a young ranch hand named Jebediah Colt. Their relationship ended when social pressures made it impossible to continue. My mother moved east without revealing she carried his child. The revelation struck the assembly like lightning. Whispers erupted throughout the hall as citizens processed the implications. Jebediah Colt had a daughter. The respected rancher's reaction to seeing Nadine suddenly made perfect sense. Nadine continued her testimony with calm precision, presenting documentation that proved her identity beyond doubt. Sarah's letter described their brief but profound relationship in Kansas. The birth certificate listed father unknown, protecting both parties from scandal. Property records showed Sarah's successful business ventures that provided Nadine with education and opportunities. My mother died 3 months ago after revealing the truth about my parentage. She sent me here not to deceive or manipulate, but to connect with the father she had loved and lost. Jebediah rose from his position at the back wall. The powerful rancher's emotional composure cracked as he moved through the crowd toward his daughter. Tears flowed freely down weathered cheeks as he confirmed every detail of Nadine's account. Sarah Washington was the finest woman I ever knew besides my late wife. She possessed intelligence, courage, and integrity that impressed everyone who met her. I never knew about Nadine until she showed me her mother's photograph 3 weeks ago. The community watched in stunned silence as father and daughter stood together for the first time publicly. Their resemblance became obvious once the relationship was revealed. The same intelligent eyes, the same determined jawline, the same natural dignity under pressure. Jeremiah Bozeman stood to present his photographic documentation of Nadine's positive impact on the community. Children's test scores, improved school attendance, and enhanced parent involvement painted a picture of educational transformation that contradicted Emmett's character assassination. Parents whose children had benefited most from Nadine's teaching began voicing support despite social pressure to remain silent. One father described his son's mathematical progress. A mother praised her daughter's newfound love of reading. The evidence of positive change was overwhelming. Dolores Ash presented testimonials from community members who had observed Nadine's character through daily interactions. Her kindness toward struggling families, her volunteer work helping elderly residents with correspondence, her respectful behavior toward everyone regardless of their social position. Emmett's accusations crumbled as the complete truth emerged. His malicious interpretation of father-daughter relationship was exposed as deliberate manipulation designed to destroy innocent people. The community recognized they had been deceived by his twisted presentation of partial facts. The banker's son faced the assembled crowd as his reputation disintegrated. His obsessive hatred had led him to weaponize truth in service of personal vengeance. The moral authority he had claimed was revealed as hypocritical manipulation of community fears and prejudices. Mayor Henderson called for order as citizens began voicing condemnation of Emmett's tactics rather than his intended targets. The vote of confidence passed by overwhelming majority. Mayor Henderson officially confirmed Nadine's teaching position with full community support while condemning Emmett's malicious campaign. Citizens who had wavered under pressure now stood firmly behind the woman who had transformed their children's education through dedication and skill. Emmett Granger left the community hall in disgrace, his reputation destroyed by his own vindictive schemes. The banking connections that had provided leverage over townspeople now worked against him as news of his character spread throughout the territory. His father's business faced scrutiny from clients who questioned the family's integrity. Within days, the Granger family relocated to Denver, seeking opportunities away from the scandal that had consumed their standing in Dust Haven. Emmett's obsessive pursuit of Nadine had cost him everything he valued while achieving nothing he desired. The community embraced the father-daughter relationship with enthusiasm that surprised both Jebediah and Nadine. Their courage in facing public scrutiny had earned respect that transcended social conventions. The truth had indeed set them free from deception and fear. 6 months later, Dust Haven had transformed into a thriving educational center that attracted families from surrounding territories. Nadine's innovative teaching methods had spread beyond the local schoolhouse through correspondence with educators throughout Colorado. Her reputation extended far beyond the frontier community that had initially rejected her presence. The memorial garden behind the Colt Ranch house bloomed, with Sarah's favorite wildflowers arranged in patterns that honored her memory while celebrating new beginnings. Father and daughter spent quiet evenings on the stone bench, sharing stories about the remarkable woman who had shaped both their lives through courage and sacrifice. Nadine's inheritance of partial ranch ownership had been formalized through territorial courts without controversy. Her business acumen complemented Jebediah's operational expertise, creating improvements that increased productivity while enhancing employee satisfaction. The Colt Ranch prospered under their combined leadership. Advanced ranching techniques that Nadine suggested had proven remarkably successful. Rotational grazing patterns improved grass recovery while reducing feed costs. Strategic breeding programs enhanced cattle quality through bloodline improvements. Her mathematical skills applied to ranch management yielded results that impressed neighboring operations. The schoolhouse had become a community gathering place where educational discussions strengthened family involvement in learning. Parents who had once viewed schooling as necessary burden now participated actively in their children's intellectual development. Literacy rates improved dramatically as entire families embraced educational opportunities. Jeremiah Bozeman's photographic documentation of the community transformation had attracted attention from territorial newspapers. His images captured the positive changes occurring in Dust Haven while preserving historical records of social progress. The photographs would eventually reach national publications showcasing frontier education success stories. Dolores Ash's boarding house had expanded to accommodate visiting educators seeking to learn Nadine's innovative methods. The additional business strengthened the local economy while establishing Dust Haven as a regional center for educational excellence. Her loyal support during the crisis had created lasting friendship with the Washington Colt family. New families arrived regularly, drawn by the community's reputation for quality education and progressive attitudes. The population growth brought economic prosperity that benefited everyone willing to embrace change and opportunity. Dust Haven evolved from isolated frontier settlement into thriving territorial town. A traveling merchant named Marcus Thornfield arrived from the territorial capital on business that extended beyond commerce. The educated gentleman had heard about Dust Haven's remarkable schoolteacher through professional networks that recognized educational innovation. His initial visit to discuss textbook purchases evolved into deeper interest in the woman behind the community's transformation. Marcus possessed qualities that Emmett Granger had lacked entirely: respect for women's intelligence, appreciation for educational achievement, understanding that partnership required equality rather than domination. His courtship of Nadine proceeded with patience and genuine admiration for her accomplishments. Jebediah observed the developing relationship with protective interest but without interference. His daughter's happiness mattered more than his personal preferences regarding suitors. Marcus demonstrated character and integrity that earned the rancher's grudging approval through consistent, respectful behavior. The courtship unfolded naturally through shared interests in education and community development. Marcus brought resources and connections that could enhance Nadine's teaching innovations while supporting her work with the ranch. Their partnership would strengthen rather than diminish her established achievements. Wedding preparations reflected the community's transformation since Nadine's arrival. Citizens who had once whispered suspicions now celebrated enthusiastically. The ceremony would take place in the schoolhouse that had become her second home, surrounded by students and families whose lives she had enriched. Jebediah walked his daughter down the aisle with pride that honored Sarah's memory while embracing their shared future. The woman who had refused every unsuitable suitor had found genuine love with a man who valued her mind as much as her heart. The ranch prospered under continued father-daughter partnership, while Marcus contributed his business expertise to their expanding operations. 3 generations of wisdom combined through Sarah's legacy, Jebediah's experience, and Nadine's innovations to create unprecedented success. Years later, visitors to Dust Haven would hear the legend of the schoolteacher who transformed a community through dignity, intelligence, and unwavering principles. Children learned about the woman who refused to compromise her values while building bridges across social divisions that had seemed insurmountable. The stone bench in Sarah's memorial garden became a place of reflection where family members gathered to share stories and make important decisions. The wildflowers bloomed each spring as reminders that love transcends time, distance, and social barriers when nurtured by courage and truth. Nadine Washington Colt Thornfield had found everything she sought when stepping off that dusty stagecoach. Family, purpose, respect, and love had emerged through trials that tested but never broke her spirit. The frontier community that initially rejected her presence had become home through perseverance and the transformative power of authentic relationships.